Good morning, good morning, good morning. I am Tamara Johnson. Sheely, good morning. It is Friday, June 21st. Summer is here, guys. It is beautiful here in Atlanta. Good morning. Good morning. Let's see. David is here and on time. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Tamara. I love your rap.
Thank you. This is my look for since those hearings we had on Wednesday around reparations. I'm still celebrating Juneteenth, David.
Oh, okay. All right.
How are you?
I'm doing okay. I've got a talk I'm doing tomorrow up at Kennesaw State.
And what are you talking about, David? Tell us.
Well, I'm talking about teaching world history to fundamentalist Christians, to born-again Christians in Kennesaw State. 20 years ago, I taught there. And I had a bunch of young people who were born-again evangelical fundamentalists, and I was teaching them the human origins, and they went and got a delegation up and asked the chair of the department to fire me because I was offending their religious sensibilities. She told them that this was a state university and a secular school, and that if they wanted something, a religious education, to go to a religious school. And she ushered them out of her office. So, but that was only the beginning of a long story, because at the same time I was living on Martin Luther King Drive in Atlanta and working, as a janitor in an apartment building. Mm-hmm. So I was going from lily white Kennesaw State back home to Martin Luther King Drive, and it was quite the adventure going between these two dimensions. I mean, it's almost like there were two different worlds.
So that is that how you've learned to navigate your whiteness, and you are so in tune with what's happening?
Well, I'm in tuned enough. Let me put it this way, since we already talked about how PO'd we are about these comments of Joe Biden. I know enough at this point to never say I don't have a racist bone in my body. I mean, anybody who says that, I once heard a prominent speaker say that when I was in an audience, and I got up to ask a question, and I said, the most racist thing a white person can say is that they're not a racist.
I'm sure that didn't sit well with a lot of white people, because they don't want to believe that they have racist tendencies, but they don't know what they don't know. Well, not to give them an excuse, but they don't know what they don't know.
But that is really, the kind of thing that you hear. I mean, nobody talked about this on the news yesterday when they had his response to Cory Booker, but that is exactly what Donald Trump says. About himself. He says, I haven't got a racist bone in my body. I think he practically used the same words.
Well, we know he's a liar anyway. So.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying,
he's a born again liar.
Yeah. I'm just saying that's the company that Biden is keeping when he says things like that. So
go back to what do you? Let's start out with Joe Biden. Let's just go there with this presidential candidate who can't seem to get his. Right. The Democratic Party wants us to believe that he's the front runner. We look at all the polls. Joe Biden is leading. Biden is leading.
Yeah.
I believe all of that is a lie, because anybody that I know, most of the people that I know, nobody is saying they are supporting Joe Biden. I don't know one person that says, "Oh, I'm all for Joe Biden." Not one.
Well, I would say two things. One is that Biden has the name recognition. And so a lot of what I think his polling numbers are is a result of just simple name recognition, because people are not yet paying attention. So this is really going to shift, I think, dramatically, and over the next 3-4 months, particularly starting after the debates next week. Second thing is that Joe Biden is a corporate zombie. That's the way I would describe him. He is a representative of the corporate interests in the Democratic Party. And in case you didn't know this, Delaware is the corporate capital of the United States, the state that Biden has been representing as the senator represented for 40 years and still represented as the vice president. That's where all of the big corporations register their corporate headquarters because of its tax-friendly and legal friendly basis. So Biden has been a corporate, lackey. I don't know what to call him. A servant of the giant corporations for decade after decade after decade. And this thing that he said about working with Senator Eastland of Mississippi, and the other white supremacist senators, Cory Booker really nailed him on it. And he pointed out that these people, all of this thing about comity and getting along and being, cooperative with each other in the Senate during the time that Biden was there and working with these segregationist white supremacists, all right, working with these white supremacists and, quote, getting things done. Booker pointed out that those people came back to the Senate over and over and over again because of armed terror against Black people and also voter suppression of white working class people. The elections that they ran were rigged during the entire period of Jim Crow, to the extent that that most of these guys, Talmadge, Eastland, Richard Russell of Georgia, Talmadge and Russell of Georgia, they were two-generation senators. Their Senate positions were handed down to them by their fathers. So these are the people that Biden lauded as being polite and cooperative. And I think Cory Booker was absolutely right to call him out on it, and to point out to him that how tone deaf he was, and it's the same thing with the stuff on women. He is tone deaf, and if there's one group that I know that's tone deaf, it's zombies. Right. So
his time has passed. I believe that Joe Biden had his time in all of this. I was listening to.
I don't think he ever was. I don't think it. I mean, this guy is, represents the faction or the power, the financial power within the Democratic Party. And I was just reading something about Elizabeth Warren in the New Yorker. And it talks about the fact that he voted for a bankruptcy bill in the late 90s that was so friendly to the credit card companies. Look on your credit card and you'll see that there's a P.O. box number in Delaware. That is the address on your credit card. That was so friendly to the credit card companies, which of course are the banks, that it actually said that you had to pay your credit card debt before you paid child support.
What?
Okay? So what that means is that single mothers who were divorced and were getting child support, if their husbands went bankrupt, their kids would go hungry before the banks would. So, and Biden voted for that bill.
That just shows you that he has been disconnected for a long time. He's dated. His time has gone, is come and gone, whenever that was. And he's not presidential to me. There's nothing about Joe Biden that says he should be our next president. There's nothing about him. And I know that I'm not the only one that feels that way. Like I said, I don't know anybody who's like on his bandwagon. Like they're going for Joe Biden. No one. I think that he's a safe bet for white America. I think that the Democrats say if
right.
we're going to bet on a candidate, we're going to bet on him, because if anybody can pull, quote unquote, these white voters,
Right.
it will be Joe Biden. They know that, especially with the whole conversation now around reparations, we are pushing the envelope from a whole nother level. And I'm telling you, and I've actually went to a meeting a couple of days ago, David, and I was not, and I know I'm not alone in my thinking. I knew it, and I know it. I think a lot of the people that follow this broadcast, that follow you and I, they're voters. They're going to vote, no matter who's there, just for the sake of, we have to vote.
Mm-hmm.
But there's people that are my generation and younger, and somebody actually said this out loud. He said, if we have to have another 4 years of Donald Trump, so be it. Because Black people are tired of being tired. They're tired of asking. We're tired of slavery. After slavery, we wanted freedom.
Yeah.
Jim Crow. We wanted equality. Now we want equity. You're gonna make this right. And this generation of us, we are not going to go to the polls. We're not going to vote. We're not going to support you. We're going to tell people not to vote for you. We're going to stand up and we're going to stand together, because we are not. We're asking for reparations. Those hearings Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, David, I was glued to the screen. Did you watch them?
No,
that
I
hearing?
didn't. Yeah, no, I didn't. But I read Ta-Nehisi Coates's article. I've read, other things about reparations, and I certainly saw some of the selections on TV of the hearings. Yeah, there were a lot of eloquent remarks that were coming out. So yes, I agree with you about that, and I think you're absolutely right. And I think the parallels with the 40th Senate District in election and in the Democratic primary between you and Sally Harrell, they parallel exactly the pattern of thinking that is behind that support that Joe Biden has, which is that Lunch Pail Joe is the only one who's going to be able to win white workers, and without, and this is really critically important, because this is the part that they don't, put in, without challenging their racial privileges. Because nobody has yet figured out a way to directly speak to white working class people that their privileges are actually hurting them.
So, David, I went out last weekend, and I like to sit at the bar. I'm not even a drinker. I drink sweet tea at the bar, but I like to sit at the bar just for the conversation. I was sitting next to this white man from Indiana by way of St. Louis. He grew up in the St. Louis area. And I talked to him about going to that I had gone to Ferguson after Michael Brown, and just kind of talking about the racial tension that was there. And he was very friendly and wanted to talk. And in the conversation, it's funny how white people are very comfortable sometimes with talking to Black and brown people about these racial issues. We're much more comfortable and much more honest most of the time with us. Because you can say maybe you can say what to me what you can't say to other white people. So in the course of the conversation with him, I made it very clear to him that yes, you can sit here and have this conversation with me, but you have to go back and have those conversations with other white people.
Right on.
And David, when I said that to him, his eyes just kind of bulged, and he got he got very nervous. And I could tell that was the most uncomfortable thought in the course of our conversation. The fact that he could have this conversation with me candidly about race and racism and all the problems, but he could not go back and have that same conversation with other white Americans. So, David, when you say how to have this conversation, that's not a conversation that, we say that. I say this to you all the time. Black and brown people, we've been saying this. We can't have that conversation with white America. How does white America make white America comfortable? Because obviously I made him very uncomfortable when I started talking about his responsibility to go back and talk to other white people.
Yeah. Well, that's not your responsibility to make him comfortable.
I didn't. He
Yeah.
got so nervous, David.
Yeah.
He got him another glass of wine. He was nervous.
Yeah.
That made him very uncomfortable. That I put that on him.
That's the role of what we might call early adopters, and pioneers. Somebody's got to break the white club, and when you do that, when you break the white club, there people who, other white people come down on you, and that's the dilemma of people who are in that position, including myself. Is to find ways to have these conversations with people, and to not lose sight of the opportunities. I have a friend, for example, whose father-in-law is a retired police detective. I'll say no more than that, in a big city. And a couple of years ago, my friend and I were having a conversation. He was saying that his father-in-law had been watching the news. A couple of years ago, there were all of these videos that were coming out about police shootings of African Americans.
They're still coming out, David.
And they're still, yeah. Well, I'm saying that this was just starting, 2, 3, 4 years ago, and this guy, my friend, just did not want to talk to him because he knew who this guy was. And I said to my friend, look, he knows who you are too. And if he is doing that, it may be that he wants to have this conversation with you, because he is troubled by what he's seeing with his own eyes, right? It disturbs him, and I think my friend missed an opportunity there to connect with his father-in-law. That is European Americans who are trying to repudiate privilege and stop thinking and acting white. We have to be sensitive and open to other white folks, and to listen when they are saying things that clearly are disturbing their equilibrium, disturbing their identity and their sense of who they are, and their position of normalcy. All right.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So guess what? There was I put this on my social media as I was watching those reparations hearings. There was Eugene Taylor Sutton. He said, "White people need reparations for their soul." Yeah. This has to be it is very disturbing.
Yeah. Well, that I think that quote goes back to I can't remember who it was, but one of the Harlem Renaissance writers of the 1920s. He said, the problem for America is redeeming black bodies and white souls. So goes all the way back, and quite so. But I also think that for most white working people, their status, their social status as white, actually undermines their status as working people. And so every time they protect this white supremacy, every time that they do something like that, they're actually undermining their own position as working people.
But they think their whiteness is more important. They think their whiteness is much more important than the fact that they're working class people.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And nobody is telling them anything different.
Because white people are scared to tell other white people something.
Exactly. Yeah.
They may out them, and then they may say something, and then they're out of the white club.
Yeah, exactly. You put it exactly the way that many people that I have worked with have put it. It's a club. It's a white club. And you know what Groucho Marx said about clubs? He said, I wouldn't want to belong to any club that would have me as a member.
Egberto, welcome.
Hey,
welcome.
Egberto. Hi.
David, Tamara, ¿cómo están? How's everybody doing?
Hey, Egberto. You made a comment on Politics Done Right this week about eating their own, and I wanted you to bring that into this conversation with David.
You mean about white people eating the white intelligentsia eating their own?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important concept. And you know, David alludes to it a lot, including what he has to say. There's something that he said that rings very true. When he said that, and actually I heard you say it as well, Tamara, and that is, it is in the best reparations are also in the best interest of white people. And so right. I mean, they don't quite get it. But to the term that you want me to go ahead and talk about is, and I hope I have the one that you want me to talk about, because you know I talk about it.
I'll tell you if it's not the one, but you talked about it Wednesday, and you gave this great example about white people now are starting to eat their own.
Okay, exactly. I know which one you're talking about then. Thank you for reminding me. You know the head's getting old. Anyway, not as old as you, Tamara, but anyhow, it goes like this. It goes like this. And it's interesting because when we had slavery, right? Black people were slaves, and they could look and say, well, they are black, and it doesn't matter what condition white people were in, they could look at black folks as slaves. But then they kept moving on, right? We had the Indians first that got slaughtered, then the black people that got into slaves, then we had the Chinese that were abused to build the Pacific Railroad. And so this plutocracy, this capital system had a way of eating all these people. But guess what? They ran out of people. They ran out of people. So David, your white skin doesn't mean anything anymore. It means nothing anymore, because it was never about your white skin. It was about using your white skin against to make you believe you had something you never had. And in that way, you would fight to the death against black freedom, against native freedom, against Chinese freedom, because you had that white skin. And as long as you had that as a dividing factor, was great. But then capitalism ran out of people to abuse. They ran out of people to eat. So now they had to start eating its own. And I hope that's the one you're talking about. They really had to start eating their own. I think I was talking to Tamara about this, and that is why for me it's about you know, I support my sister in all that she's doing, but the reason I support other avenues as well, like coalition building, etc., is because I think the biggest bang is going to be realized not when I somehow change somebody morally, because this country was not formed morally. You know, people always say, oh, one of the reasons I was never a king fanatic was we were hoping to appease, or rather, we were hoping to look onto people's moral being. And I don't think there's a moral being in people. This country wasn't formed on some sort of morality. You don't have a country that have slavery, kill the Indians, and abuse the Chinese, and say, oh, we were a moral country. So how can you appeal to something that was never there? I want to appeal to people's way of living now and say, hey, you hang with me, we can make life better for all of us.
Robby just joined us. Good morning, Robby.
Hey, Robby.
Good morning, Robby.
Buenas, hi everybody.
Buenas tardes, ¿cómo estás, hermana?
Todo bien, no puedo quejarme de nada, escuchando todo. Everything good, listening to y'all, can't complain.
David, we don't know what that meant.
No, I do.
That was good. I didn't. Somebody had to translate me.
No, we'll translate for you. She did already.
Yes, she did. Thank you, Robby.
You know.
We've been talking about reparations and, you know, eating their own, and just, you know, those. Did you see the hearings?
I did. I watched as much as I could. I was so grateful that they focused on the historical context. I hear what Egberto's saying, and oftentimes, in my opinion, you know, which we all we always think about things in a duality, right? Right, wrong, either or. You know, we don't live in the grays, and oftentimes life is not like that, and it gets complicated with intersectionality. You know, and I'm so grateful to new folks like you know, all the Rashida, Alexandria, all these new ladies that are coming in, yes, not from an elite status, and I think that lower income experience, right, and the diversity of them, of who they are, is really allowing for true reform, you know, at least pushing back on it. But what concerns me is when we say that whiteness means nothing, right, today, because I don't know, like maybe that's a black and white way of looking at it, like a duality, because it does. It even you know, the poorest, well, I guess it depends on, I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna preface this, it's gonna sound funny. I like white people. I have white friends, you know. Okay?
David, we like you. We love you, David.
Okay. Sometimes people think I'm white, you know, which that brings in another thing. We'll get to that later. I took out some clients who looked at houses that were very expensive, and I had showed this same home to women of color, right? And who could also afford to buy this home. But the interesting part, and they both ironically were relying on family members. But the interesting part was the couple who was dear, right, said, you know what, I'm gonna call my mom for help. And that goes to show this generational wealth. And here's the thing, when they talked about it in the hearings and they referenced, you know, that people, the labor, the value of labor, which David always talks about, and, you know, building this country for free, basically, and not getting the value in exchange, right? And then on top of it, the trauma. There was an article in Sumter County, which is in Georgia. I think they rescued, and I know this sounds a little off, I promise I'm going somewhere, 27 pit bulls. And every time I see these stories about people fighting, you know, and I hear about the morality and people fighting animals, and I hear about the morality and so on, they often put these pictures up, and they're often people of color. And when you look at the background of that county, which is by Americus, it shows that it was originally obviously like predominantly white, and there were slaves there, and they built it. And then from the cotton and plantation industry, they went to the prison industry. And now they're in the agricultural industry. So they remained impoverished, but you see the lineage, right? So you know where the Black people are and what the median income is and why they're doing this. And when I think about in terms of morality and saving, you know, whoever's souls, do you know the type of state you must be in to have to take an animal and teach it to kill each other? Like the lives these people are leading to survive. Think about that. So whose souls are we talking about here? It's because it's not just white people. Walking around where people reference the poverty in Vine City next to Mercedes-Benz, and they call them zombies. And you see these people on all kinds of whatever, and literally in their own world. So just food for thought.
Let me. I want to come to you and say one thing. First of all, I don't think there's I think a lot of times when you hear me talk, specifically Robby, you may think that I am saying, when I say things like the white skin doesn't mean anything anymore, I'm not talking in a historical nature at all. What I'm trying to say is white skin is no longer going to be your savior when it comes to what capitalism has to do to you now. Okay, in other words, there's no more of us to eat, and the ones and there are enough of us also who have bought the Kool-Aid, a la Oprah Winfrey, Smith, all these billionaires that are now Black. They are Black in skin, but they are of the master's economic system, which hurts their own. So we have a Smith who gives a whole lot of money to this university, this Black university, and everybody says hoorah. But in the process of giving $40 million to that university, his industry is going ahead and killing the work that you do, Robby, in a Black community that's gentrified. He's making a profit into kicking his own people out. So those are the dynamics that I'm talking about. Is he a Black man, skin wise? Yes, but it's more than just skin now, because he, along with other people, are trashing poor white people as well.
No, I don't disagree at all. I just, it is complicated. It truly is. There was recently, and I'm glad that we get into the beneath the surface structures, because that's really where the solutions are. There was an article recently, actually Buckhead, and there was a picture of our mayor that's circulating around Atlanta. So the Darlington is the last affordable housing in Buckhead. And for those of you not from Atlanta, Buckhead is, considered very posh and, very elite, et cetera. So they're not going to have affordable housing anymore. And when you think about that in terms of north and south and traffic wise, who are the people that are going to work in Buckhead? So Atlanta has one of the biggest traffic congestion issues at all. So we're removing the affordable housing. So where's it all going to go? And how does that work systematically? And the ironic part is, again, it's the policies. It's who's pushing the policies, who's creating the policies, who understands a working individual, and the multi-layers on there. So the other day, Keisha is on this picture, it's circulating, and it's her and maybe 20 people with, shovels at a groundbreaking. And everyone behind her literally is white, or at least appears to be. And it's fascinating because when you see the visual of that in Atlanta, especially, who's creating policy, who's the front, or maybe AKA token or whatever to appease masses, but who's really implementing policy, and who is that going to work for, right? Because probably none of those people ever worked a job that was minimum wage that needed affordable housing. Probably none of those people take the bus, and there's so many layers to this between the nonprofits. I recently heard from some folks in New York. They covered, our real estate story, how investors are gobbling it up. Didn't go beneath the surface. I hope that they will in a series maybe, but didn't. Go ahead.
No, they won't. They won't. That is why we are necessary. They won't. The reason why we have independent. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to say that we also have to take into consideration one of the things that's going on is resistance. There is a consolidation of resistance to white supremacy that has been building, and this generation, the struggle has been intensifying, which means there is less room for the ruling elites to provide the kind of social status, for working class whites than they had. So it isn't. There's lots of cannibalism in capitalism, and there's the cannibalism of the ultimate cannibalism of the capitalists, taking the labor and of working people and turning it into profit and concentrating wealth and power in their hands. But the system of social control that's used is renting the white section of the working class, literally renting them, to act as cops on everybody else, and giving them little badges. That's what whiteness is. It's this little badge, right? It doesn't feed your kids. That's how Martin Luther King described it. Jim Crow, that scrawny bird, does not feed your kids, and yet the white working people fall for it because a whole system reinforces that set of illusions that these little perks, of racial privilege that give you these actual real material advantages over people of color, particularly Black people, but don't really feed your kids.
I always talk about that being the you're fighting for something you never had. So you're right. They give you the biscuit, and that is what the part of the red line that you're on is the biscuit, but it's not the pie.
Yeah. Well, I do think that that there's there's a tension that we have to hold in our minds. That is, this idea that their privileges are real, but they're not benefits. And that's a contradiction. That's a dialectical, relationship. They're real, but only if you look at it from the point of view that I'm not Black, I'm white. Which is what that means. And that tension really runs throughout American history. It's not simple hypocrisy to talk about this country in the way that people do, the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and all of this other stuff. I mean, the guy who wrote the Declaration of Independence, was a slaveholder, and a coercive, person who had Black children that he never acknowledged.
That is when we talk about the morality of it. That is the reason why I don't believe in policy that depends on the morality of white people or Black people or anything. Because I want to do something here, because I like to be honest in the things that I say, and even let's say the Black community, right? And even the Latino community as well. There are gradations of colors, right? And you have within these gradation of colors, some having a feeling that they are better than others, right? That is the same sentiment among white people. It's just that they're white, so they're the best. So I mean, I don't want to make this a white supremacy only issue. Because the mere fact that this issue occurs within communities of color themselves mean more than anything else, it's also a human issue.
Well, Egberto, let's take this, David. Let's let Egberto give a national political update on his last 3 to 5 minutes.
No, I need 2 minutes for that, and then I'm gone. And it goes like this: what El Señor Biden is doing is classic. Mr. Biden learned very much from Donald Trump. What he learned is that you never apologize and you appease to the lowest class white people you can. What Biden is doing is something nobody is talking about. Biden is sending a very loud dog whistle to the working class white people. I am one of the Democrats you can vote for. I am not going to apologize to no Black man. And number 2, I am going to say, I am going to let you know that, remember with busing, I was with you. Remember that I had segregationist people that I dealt with. And I wink, they were mean people. But in Trump's world, we love mean people. You guys have a wonderful day. Robby, David, and Tamara.
Thank you. You can find Egberto on Politics Done Right Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. This man is everywhere. Thank you, Egberto.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Egberto. Yeah, I think he's absolutely right. These are I don't know if you remember Bill Clinton's Sister Souljah moment, where he took down this Black woman rap singer and sent a message that he was, Sister Souljah.
I remember Sister Souljah. What did he do to Sister Souljah? Now you got to bring jog.
Well, I'm trying to remember, but she was critical of the white supremacy in the Democratic Party, and he attacked her, and distanced himself from her, and sent out a dog whistle message that he was not going to be supporting Black people who were fighting for their rights.
Oh, I gotta go look this up now. Now I gotta go find out what he did.
I found it.
You found it?
Mm-hmm.
Not only,
1992.
92,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
At his his first
what
presidential campaign.
What people don't understand, and this Democrats hear me loud and clear. There are white people inside the Democratic Party who are not our friends. I think we get so caught up and we're Democrats and we're together. There are white people, and this is my fight because I saw it for myself. that
Right.
there are white supremacists, there are racists, there are people inside the Democratic Party that are not our friends.
Well, this came up in the hearings. They referenced who the Democratic Party actually supported, historically, and what they stood for and when things changed. And, perhaps why, with the votes and who the Democratic Party was going after in terms of demographics. Mm-hmm. There's a comment from an interesting fellow. I know him. He's has another name for Buckhead, by the way.
I have another name for Buckhead, by the way.
What is it? That's actually this gentleman is an interesting fellow because he's from Atlanta and he knows the background historically, very similar to David, and he discusses politics very openly. And being from the South, he has interactions with his own friends, and it's interesting to watch them. I follow him a lot, and he's actually an attorney in Atlanta. Doug, is he gonna?
He's going to come on our broadcast. Okay. We look forward to having you, Doug.
What's his name for Buckhead?
Yeah, that was Doug. He'll have to put that in the comments.
Yeah.
I don't know what his name for Buckhead is.
Well, it's going to be luxury living over there. And the funny thing is I've even heard Buckhead, a prominent councilwoman in Buckhead, upset because they cannot come out of their homes in these very expensive homes at a certain time of rush hour because it's so congested and the lack of infrastructure.
Yeah.
So to your point, David, it's ironic that they would not support, holistic and vertical development in a large area like Southwest Atlanta to get it out of their own backyard. Yeah. Right? It's in their own interest, but they don't.
Yeah.
And I have to say that even though, and I think Egberto's called it a biscuit, in comparison to the pie, and you're like, it's, scraps, it's really the illusion, it's little badges. But I suspect, though, because it's nice to pay your bills, it's nice to have a home, it's nice to have a car. The illusion of it feels good. You've got a garden. And I see these people in Buckhead.
Right, Robby?
So and they don't want to give that up. And they don't admit that engaging in this, looking into as people would call it, being intellectually honest about history. What they're not admitting is if you don't follow our rules, you can be out just like anybody else. Mm-hmm. And any whistleblower, any advocate, will tell you that because they've experienced it. Everyone is what's that word that you can get rid of them? Disposable or replace whatever. Mm-hmm. And this thing with Blank is fascinating because he's Arthur Blank and the Benz Stadium. Here's a millionaire. We invested as taxpayers in this stadium. It looks like a war zone outside of the stadium. We pay people $10 an hour. That's supposed to be a living wage to build this millionaire's dream to play sports in. And after it's done, he goes and buys a yacht.
I drove over there. I told Robby a little bit ago. I drove over there just the other day. I hadn't been in that part of downtown Atlanta in quite a while, but yet I was over there just a few days ago, and it broke my heart to pass that stadium and look around in the community surrounding it. I don't even have words. I just I could barely I was driving slow, looking to the left at this big old stadium that Robby and I referred Stone Mountain. And then you have the new Stone Mountain, and then you have these communities of people that are struggling. The poverty is real.
Yeah, I mean, there's not home ownership, there's not vehicles, there's not bus stops. And then because of the policies and how we execute and who's in charge, when these things come in, it does not benefit those people. And that's why I'm so upset about this article it's the New York Times in real estate. I mean, I'm grateful because they showed investors are buying up everything and they had the data from CoreLogic and so on and interviewed. But to me, it was light. And then I saw the same article virtually in the Wall Street Journal. So literally the same article, within 24 hours apart from each other. But again, when you get into the intricacies of the systems, agent investors, if I go and I'm allowed to use my internal knowledge, to flip properties for my best interest, and you're my client, when are you ever going to get a good deal? Why is that allowed? The Georgia Real Estate Commission protecting public interest. Why isn't there a limit if we have low inventory? Why are we allowing hedge funds, to buy up all these foreclosures and hold them and not even pay more taxes to go back into the community? Why are we allowing wholesalers who are not licensed? There's a whole submarket of people doing assignment of contract transactions, stealing people's equity, and literally, to some degree, you have to be licensed to get a compensation or commission. So how is this occurring without regulation? All of this, normal people cannot buy a home anymore inside of Atlanta. So, and then we've got a homeless crisis, an affordability crisis. Guess who's gonna pay to fix that? Guess who's gonna subsidize that housing? Guess who's going, right? Aren't we? Mm-hmm. So we're gonna pay quadruple, So I was very dismayed, to say the least. What do y'all?
Well, this goes back several generations also, Robby. The hollowing out of a stable working class community in the inner cities, which undermined the tax base of the big cities in this country, led to bankruptcies. And by the way, in recent years, the pensions of people who worked for city and state governments have been hollowed out, and so there are trillions of dollars owed to pensions, to state and municipal employees' pension systems that the state governments, particularly Republican, but not only Republican, have been raiding for decades now, and the money is not there for folks like teachers and cops and firemen, who were paying into that system and were expecting that they were going to get. They didn't make much money. I mean, teachers don't make all that much money, but the contract, the social contract was that you could retire, you would have, health insurance and a comfortable retirement income, and that's what, and it's going away for a lot of folks because the tax base is so undermined that many of these state legislatures were forced to make a choice between paying the money now or holding on to it for the retirement incomes.
That's where
paying for things that were immediately required versus holding on to that. I mean, every time you impoverish the mass of people in this country, and that's what they're doing. They're impoverishing the mass of people, and with a tiny sliver of the population accumulating all of this wealth, like the example of the stadium that you just gave. It does not work. It does not work.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah,
it's not sustainable. And to your point, David, like,
absolutely,
between the stadium and the airport, it's almost as if they're fighting for the spoils. But the people who are actually at the airport, our largest employer, have no collective bargaining ability, which impacts all of our safety and national security. Like, shout out to Yvette Avery. She went, Yvette Avery, who we've had on the show, who was a labor advocate, who was wrongfully terminated for being a labor advocate after 7 years of a quality record from, a large corporation in Atlanta. Atlanta City Council's not touching it. Local journalism is not covering it. What does that say about our elected officials? They don't even, maybe it's an illusion of power they have. There's an unspoken.
And it's a position. They love those positions, Robby. They don't want to lose those seats. So they're not going to do anything that would, rock the boat or they don't want to lose. It's all about those positions.
Unless there is a pushback by working people, which is what, keeping the eyes open, exposing these things. I mean, we're a little voice. We're a tiny little voice, but there are folks who are listening, not just to us, but to these issues that are trying to mobilize, and that's what elected officials need to get elected, and they can't get elected by the billionaires.
Yeah, the money doesn't. The money doesn't. You can't win. The dollar doesn't. The amount of money they can raise and money that is not. It's a part of it, but
not the be all and the end all. Yeah,
I say this with my industry because I've been organizing the beauty and barber industry for the last 7 years. That is where I came from, and I say this to beauty and barber professionals that you know what, the only thing that scared legislators is not getting reelected. So you have to use that power of the vote, whether it is voting for them or voting them out of office. You use that because that's the only thing that they really understand. Watch David. Look.
How much
in the middle of the broadcast?
How much more though does somebody have to go through? Like, from my understanding, there are people in Buckhead paying $50,000 in property taxes. And Atlanta's solution is to generate more home ownership in Southwest Atlanta to get us to pay more taxes. Mm-hmm. But when you look at the alternative, creating a regional economy in Southwest Atlanta because of the geographic desirability, connecting the world's busiest airport to downtown, and that commercial district being able to generate, those funds instead of coming after regular people, to pay this. It's incredible that our council is dormant on that, is silent on that. And that someone like Yvette would go to speak publicly to city council. It's on camera now saying this is what's happening at the airport. And Southwest Atlanta, it not only impacts the north side, but we impact Tri-Cities, because of where we are. Because we're right under 20 in the middle. We impact Hateville, East Point, College Park, the expansion over at the airport, the South Side, even, going towards Savannah. And it's like, I'm really flabbergasted. And I'm not saying anyone particular, but Andre Dickens sits on the transportation committee. I see Marcy Overstreet, who's nearby my district, doing tours of the airport. Keisha Lance Bottoms has Ed Bastian, the CEO of Delta, on her board of advisors. Felicia, I see them touring the airport. They seem to believe all the hype. They think because Delta will sponsor an event, it's okay that we subsidize and hedge their fuels and starve Clayton County of the rightful taxes that it should have.
The money is talking. The money is talking, and they're listening to that.
Okay. I almost wonder if they don't have the power to do it, though. I almost wonder, maybe they don't.
They don't have the guts, Robbie. It ain't. They're just a lot of times these people get elected. They get in these positions. They like like you say, the illusion of power, but they are cowards, because if they were really all about the people, they would stand up to all of this. They would be doing what you and I do.
Don't hold back how you really feel.
They're cowards. The thing is that money is talking, and that they like having those checks written to them.
Or is it that they think they're in the club? Do they think they're in the club?
They are in the club for the moment, and some people will take that. This might be the only time they ever get in the club, Robbie. So if they get this position for now, and they sit in that seat for 2, 4, 6 years, however long, and
and then they are connected,
and they're connected,
and
then
protected,
they get
maybe
on boards. What'd you say, Robbie?
And protected, maybe. But they gotta follow the.
Yeah, look. I think, I keep bringing up this idea that complicates the situation, which is that there is the 1/10 of 1%, the billionaires, and then there's a whole group of people, the 9.9%, that are their high tech, they're technological servants. These the technology of both, the way that biotech folks who do startup companies that get bought up by big pharma, or they are the folks who are technically proficient in running the governmental system, all right, and other kinds of technological, and they are rewarded. They are rewarded, and they get proximity to power, right? But for the rest of us, for the 90% of the rest of us, even those people who are making $100,000 a year, $150,000 a year, there is enormous insecurity. And like you say, a person in Buckhead could be paying, huge amounts of money in taxes, and really, they're in a high level equilibrium trap. They have to keep earning that money, because otherwise, they
couldn't afford the lifestyle.
They couldn't afford the lifestyle. So we're all in this situation of running after security, right? And you can never be secure enough, because in this society, you don't have health insurance, unless you've got the ability to pay for it. You don't have the college tuition for your kids unless you've got $250,000 to shell out. Otherwise, your kids are going into debt, or you're going into debt. So there are all of these things that are part of what the ordinary person in other wealthy capitalist countries takes as their rights as citizens, right? We don't have that here. We don't have job security. We don't have any of those things as something we could take for granted. And there's precariousness, in our lives, tremendous precariousness. Yeah.
The way that I'm interpreting what you're saying, David, and I think I completely agree with you, which is the first long time, is that, our politicians are gatekeepers. They are gatekeepers who are protected and rewarded. And that's why they don't get investigated with ethics. That's why ethics complaints get buried, and they back each other. And that's the only way someone who appears honest can disregard someone who's a whistleblower from labor at your airport, and ignore what she's saying publicly, ignore that she's been terminated, or stand next to a politician that has robbed her own constituency, and you are fine in an Instagram selfie with her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, who's powerless though? The ethics board. I can tell you, they are really powerless.
Well, let's take a look at the fish where it's rotting first, at the head. Mm-hmm. I mean, we now have I think I could tick off at least 4 cabinet officials in the Trump administration who were former lobbyists for the industry that they're supposed to regulate. Mm-hmm. We now have a Secretary of Defense who was a lobbyist for Raytheon, one of the biggest defense contractors. The EPA is run by a guy who is a coal industry executive. And I could go on and on and on. And there's no way to get these people out. Many of them are acting, so they're not covered. They have not been vetted by the Senate. And even if they were, the Republicans would vote them in. They would use their majority to approve them. So where you could get somebody on the Supreme Court, Brett Kavanaugh, who clearly not only about the hearings, and everything that went on there about his past, but also had lied when he was up for his DC district court position.
But do you think that they're aware because I look at, like, just to bring it back hyper local. There's an article recently where our mayor Keisha's saying that the scandals at City Hall and under the Reid administration has left a trauma locally, and now people don't want to do business with the city. So some degree she'll be glad when it's over, and she's almost speaking as if she was not part of that. As if she, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm like, does she? Because this is an attorney. This is a woman who graduated. She's an attorney. She's accomplished, and you got to wonder, does she believe that? Does she believe what she's saying? Even taking that picture and not noticing that you are 20 deep, with nothing but Caucasian people standing around you. Yeah. Nobody saw that.
We saw it, Robby, and that's why we're gonna keep talking and keep doing what we're doing. We're at the top of the hour. I want to thank my trusty co-host, Mr. David Slavin, the beautiful Miss Robby L. Caban. You can find us every Friday right here on Facebook, YouTube. Mr. Egberto Willies at politicsdoneright.com. You can find David at Acknowledge the Divide right here on Facebook. Miss Robby at the MPU Resident Public Forum. You can find us all on TamaraForGeorgia.com. We will see you next Friday, same time, same channel.
Take care. Power to the people.
Power to the people.